I will quote a passage from your book, Brain Poverty. You say, since the main issue is transferring the genome to the next generation, the bride's choice of a groom can be predicted precisely after she suffers a little emotionally. Ultimately, the hippocampal system of the brain, or the ancient brain regions, is used, and her choice will likely be determined by the biological preference for the chosen person. She will instinctively prefer comfortable life prospects for herself and her children. End of quote. Does this mean that those men who accuse women of materialism and self-interest are unsuccessful or unqualified men who are unable to ensure a comfortable life for the woman and their potential offspring generation?
Let's say they justify their social failure from a woman's point of view. They accuse her of having little human emotions and noble feelings at the expense of material interest. But all this criticism is a feature of baboons. It is known that olive monkey baboons in Africa behave like this in the group when they're angry with their females who chose other males. This reaction is found in all monkeys, even the lowest species. The female brain is already structured this way. We have discussed how the frontal sections of the brain are essential for humans mainly to share food with their offspring generation. It is up to women to solve the reproductive tasks, which is why they prefer men who have a stronger and more successful personality and have a Mercedes car. This is not just materialistic tendency. The woman simply thinks about how to transfer the genome to the next generation in this case. She acts instinctively according to the hierarchical hormonal models that have formed over millions of years of evolution.
Continuing the previous quote, you say that the appearance of emotional suffering in the bride who ultimately chooses a rich groom at the expense of the beautiful and poor is very good. This suffering is evidence of the strong cortical structures of the brain and the resistance of this area of the brain to sex hormones resulting from the dominance of the biological process. End of quote.
For a very simple reason. They often say that it's only the instinctive hormonal section of the female brain that works. But that's not true. Women use their brain for difficult comparisons for evaluative activity, meaning they use the cortex of the two big hemispheres of the brain, but only as a tool to assist the brain's limbic system. It turns out that her brain's cortex works intensively, and this is during decision-making.
In other words, the cortex of the two big hemispheres is what the heart chooses emotionally, while the limbic system is what the mind chooses logically.
Of course, this is a difficult matter. She chooses with her heart a metaphor of that male who appears more masculine, even if he may be poor, or she may lean towards empathizing with a male with good sexual abilities and without bad habits. In other words, the choice would again be in favor of the biologically suitable male. Or she might fall in love with someone who has creative potential but is poor, or whose talents have not been evaluated adequately. But in general, the final decision is made by the woman's mind, not her heart. It suggests to her that it is better to choose a man who may be older, short, and overweight but rich, rather than choosing a beautiful man with bulging muscles but poor, because the main issue in evaluating a woman is spending on offspring generation. And to evaluate, the brain's cortex must work.
You provided a very interesting example about the common stereotype that men love with their eyes and women with their ears. And you said that this is absolutely true from a neurological and biological point of view. Of course, is this true then? Of course, if the matter is explained, it is a very interesting topic.
Well, if we look closely at one of the very rich countries in Southeast Asia and its president who has now become old, we will see the following. We will not name this country because it is subject to individual rule and so on. When this president was active in the sexual field, he brought groups of beauties with long legs, models from various fashion centers in Europe, to his country. He did that to spend enjoyable time with them in the sexual field. And the question arises, why didn't he choose short, chubby, and crooked-legged mistresses for himself? Didn't he feel inclined towards such women? Isn't that so? The truth is that the conscious reaction of the man to the woman's appearance has appeared a long time ago. But the instinctive reaction to the fact that a woman who is slender and long-legged is considered healthy and therefore would have good offspring generation. This reaction has existed in men for more than 40 million years.
You have mentioned in your writings about women's desire to wear natural fur and its connotations. This is evidence that women can allow themselves to breastfeed their children. And I repeat that this also relates to choice. For the benefit of women who show their slender and long legs under their coats, that is why women prefer to wear high heels. Because in all primates since ancient times, the growth of leg bones specifically was an indicator that the female is sexually mature. Therefore, women wear high heels to make their legs appear longer. Some psychologists believe that women want to do this unconsciously to match men.
These psychologists are not average people, and I can say that they have a very wide imagination. There is a simple instinctive mechanism, as men consider the presence of high-heeled shoes as a sign of the woman's reproductive activity, which appears through feeling the woman's attractiveness. Sometimes tall women also wear high-heeled shoes. Women are interested in being seen from a distance to widen the search for a potential partner, so they use other details to attract attention. High heels, long hair, legs in stockings, and a woman may tolerate trouble patiently in the search for the right partner.
I will read another excerpt from your book. Feminine sexual centers are associated with a part of the midbrain, the hypothalamus, responsible for transmitting information from sensory organs in humans, including the auditory acceptance system. Therefore, when women choose between two partners who are equal in appearance, they prefer the one with a confident and slightly low voice. This feature often affects the choice of actors in cinema. Male sexual arousal cases are mainly determined by a group of brain centers starting from the nucleus.
From the nucleus above the compactness.
Yes, this nucleus is located near the optic nerves and extends to the fibers that give visual signals. Specifically, this property is accepted by women through auditory impressions and men through visual impressions, triggering the necessary brain centers that stimulate the production of sex hormones.
I will convey what I quoted in simple language to make it easier. When we say that a man loves with his eyes, we actually mean the real difference in the brain structure of men and women. Visual signals come to the primary visual centers in the male brain. And from these centers, many fibers branch out to that area in the male brain that transmits the sexual recognition signal. The man saw a beautiful fur coat, long legs, and high-heeled shoes.
Love happens at first sight.
It is not love, but something entirely different. It is sexual arousal at first sight. The reason is that sexual hormones are immediately released. That is, the hormones come to the appropriate area of the brain, but what happens in women is entirely different. And although women judge men by sight, the auditory system is considered more important for the appearance of attraction. In summary, this large number of auditory system branches in the female brain leads precisely to those centers that produce sexual hormones. Studies have been conducted on this subject for a long time, and therefore, the main way for a man to win a woman is to conspire with his illusions and tickle their ears. For example, they taught one of the girls in her father's house that she had to obey her husband and dedicate herself to working in the house. But when he married her, he suddenly told her that she could now make decisions independently. At that point, the phenomenon of redirected exclusionary activity appeared quickly in the woman, and she began to act according to her illusions about freedom. But following what her husband said, feminine behavior is directed primarily towards successful and comfortable reproduction.
In your book, Brain Sorting, you write about the possibility of determining a person's natural professional tendencies with the help of high-resolution imaging equipment. I'm interested in hearing your opinion on the following matter. You know that divorce statistics worldwide have become catastrophic, with numbers increasing year after year and millions of families disintegrating annually. Of course, this is partly due to women's liberation, as we have gained the freedom to dissolve marital bonds even in traditional societies. But can we influence the brain so that men, for example, become loyal to one woman? Scientists have shown that some monogamous field mice choose their partner until death, and they found in these mice' brains, as in humans, dopamine receptors. D1 and D2 dopamine receptors are well known for their significant importance in shaping the feeling of love. And scientists have explained.
Studies on field mice are not convincing. I know very well that a study like this should not be published with such conclusions. A study must be conducted for decades, or at least for a decade, with the genetic fingerprint of all mice and their offspring generation. However, this has not been done.
What is the need for that?
To make sure that these mice are monogamous, and if so, then the offspring generation of mice should be from one father. This is what needs to be verified, but it has not been done, and therefore I consider this work insufficiently reliable, and I'm clarifying this. These scientists studied dopamine and studied field mice.
There are no dopamine D2 receptors.
There are, but they do not determine these features, and by that I mean monogamy. Dopamine is a compound in the brain with multiple functions, and linking it to this specific function is not possible. In addition, I repeat here that the study was conducted inaccurately and relied on assumptions about monogamy in field mice, and therefore this study is not reliable. However, there are other examples where monogamy is discussed, such as why do all male birds sing loudly and differently from each other? It is to distance themselves from other males, to choose a mate, build a nest with her, and have offspring generation. He guards his beloved mate from the harassment of other strange birds, ensuring that his chicks and so on live in their nest. The bird stays up at night, feeds the chicks during the day, and guards the female all the time. But when scientists took the chicks from the nest for study and did genetic analysis, it turned out that 1/3 of them were not from that bird's offspring generation.
Some viewers may feel frustrated now, as this information encourages reflection and contemplation.
Everything should be studied properly. The same goes for certainty through generations. However, if it turns out that even the strictest of birds in guarding its family was deceived by a chemical effect, then there is no benefit to considering dopamine as a cause for monogamy.
Okay. But what do you think if a high-resolution tomography device is built so that couples are first tested through this device to inform them? Are they suitable for each other in terms of brain composition or not? So that people do not suffer in a marriage that may not be successful.
In fact, when a man and a woman come together and still operate after sexual hormones, they will try not to pay attention to the partner's lack of understanding of words or ideas, and will always try to adapt to the partner. They are actually speaking in two different languages.
The different structure of the brain.
And the brain structure is not different. They can put different meanings in one concept, even in very simple things. As long as the hormone level is high, the woman and the man can agree between them, and as long as they intend to have sex and enjoy it, they can understand each other. But once this lust stops and turns into a routine practice, it becomes apparent that the man and woman understand the meanings of words differently and have different understandings of reality, and all of this makes them very different people very quickly. But why do men and women think differently? Because their thoughts are processed by different neural elements in the brain. And for this reason, I believe that with the emergence of high-capacity imaging, the first task may not be to search for geniuses with its help, but the first task should be to put this device on the doors of wedding halls. With the help of this device, applicants for marriage can be tested to see accurately whether the brain structure of each of them corresponds to the brain structure of the other.
But has it become clear by what criteria the extent of compatibility will be determined?
The main centers for identifying similarity will be the precise movement of the linguistic connection, if these areas are similar to such a degree, or that in terms of structure.
Specifically based on similarity and not integration.
This is an opportunity to study with greater accuracy and to compare between the male and female limbic devices. The limbic device is the vast collection of different structures in the brain. It affects internal organ functions, the sense of smell and memory, and much else, including emotions, and the emotions of men and women can appear in different forms. Women can suffer from hysteria, and men can show excessive aggressiveness. For example, the almond-like body in the limbic device can vary in size by a factor of 3. We are talking about hundreds of millions of cells, so one person can be aggressive and another person can be non-aggressive. But if an aggressive man were to live with an aggressive woman, the situation would not end well in the end. Personality traits and behavior traits are called the psychological pattern in psychology, but people in different situations deliberately hide their psychological pattern to win the desired partner. But improving the PET scanner will allow us to see the main structural basis of behavior in the human brain, and then the divorce rate will decrease significantly.